just in case we have problems.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for your patience. Hopefully everyone has gotten some ideas that can be used and can be incorporated into the work that you're doing. We are so very pleased to be able to welcome as our next plenary speaker, Secretary of Louisiana Public Safety and Corrections, Secretary James LeBlanc. Secretary LeBlanc has worked for the Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections for more than 40 years. He has served the past 11 years as secretary, being appointed to the cabinet position by 2 governors. Secretary LeBlanc enlisted in the United States Army and served in the Vietnam War. After an honorable discharge in 1971, he returned to school and received a BA in Business Administration from Southeastern Louisiana University. His career in corrections began in 1973 at Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women. Secretary LeBlanc's commitment to Louisiana's justice system includes a focus on the fundamental importance of public safety while giving all citizens the opportunity to live productive lives. He routinely emphasizes re-entry as a major factor of the department's mission. Re-entry is his passion. He believes that establishing valuable real-world vocational, educational, and life skills training for people in prison is one of the keys to ensuring the core mission of public safety. And now, please join me in welcoming Secretary LeBlanc.
All right. So thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate that. I don't add up those numbers when you talk about 1973 to 2020. Most people, when I say that, they think maybe I'm losing my mind for 47 years. But as you mentioned, I'm very passionate about where our criminal justice system is here in Louisiana. And it's because of people like that are listening today that keeps me going. And of course, changing lives makes a big difference. So anyway, thank you for the invitation to be with you today, even if it is virtually. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought us all many obstacles, no question. But it's also forced us to be innovative and creative about the way we do business. This week's virtual conference is but one example of that innovation. And I commend the real board for finding a way to keep their important work moving forward to this state. I'm excited about the conference tracks you will all get to choose from this week: housing, employment, reentry strategies, legal and law enforcement interests. These are all key components of our reentry efforts in Louisiana, either through the lens of the returning citizen, the nonprofits and service providers supporting them, or the criminal justice practitioners who are trying to make a difference. Today, I want to take this opportunity to share what the staff of the department has done to be innovative and creative about meeting our mission in 2020, while also ensuring the safety and security of our operations, which includes COVID-19, and I'll hit on each one of these: JR, the Justice Reinvestment, Reentry, our PNP, our community corrections, employment, families of the incarcerated, our mental health issues that we're working with, restrictive housing, which is a big issue in our department, and of course, diversity and social justice work. In COVID-19, this pandemic has affected us all, personally and professionally. Our work this year has looked differently from past years, and the challenges only have intensified. We were moving forward with in-reach and coordinating case planning as part of the reentry efforts. In our reinvestment strategies, we were identifying obstacles and gaps, creating solutions when COVID forced us to pause and focus on the basics, including safety. In our state prisons, we were forced to shut down visiting to limit risk to bringing COVID into our prisons. This included family visiting as well as provider visiting, including our grant providers, and volunteer visits. It was not an easy decision but one that was critical that we had to make. We had to pause on our educational and reentry programs and find ways to offer these services through correspondence, which I will talk about later. We had to limit the movement within our prisons to reduce risk. We had to discontinue transfers to reduce risk. We shut down non-emergency services, again, to reduce risk. We implemented reverse isolation practices to protect the most vulnerable. We screened every person entering our prison and with required temperature checks. While we continue with many of these practices today, we are working to open services back up where it is safe for us to do so. For example, at our prisons without any positives, and I'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. There's much that can be said about the staff at DPS&C and their response to this pandemic and the work they have done 7 days a week, 24 hours a day since this all started. While I don't want to use my entire time today with you on COVID response, I do want to summarize it all for you in a few key data points and touch on where this pandemic has impacted our work together. DPS&C has issued 11 different versions of our COVID guidelines, updating our policy and practices as soon as new information was received or CDC guidelines were changed. As we all know, those were changing on a pretty regular basis and facing a pandemic that we've never been faced with before. We captured information on 2,400 staff who have been tested, as well as 1,321 staff that have been retested. Captured the total positive staff statewide was 553, a 23% positive rate since this started. And I would remind everybody when this started, it was mostly cases where there were symptomatic symptoms, and the positive rate was driven up by that. We unfortunately have lost 6 staff due to the pandemic. We lost a warden, a doctor, 3 correctional officers at Louisiana State Penitentiary, and 1 probation and parole agent. Currently, we have 53 positive staff out statewide, which is, we have almost 5,000 staff. And we have 49 recovered staff who have returned to work. We have tested 6,366 prisoners and conducted 6,793 retests on those individuals. Our positivity rate was 37%. And I would remind you again, in the beginning, it was higher. We have conducted mass testing at 6 of our 8 facilities. Hunt and Wade have not had positive numbers to indicate a need for mass testing, but we will test if that need arises, and believe me, we're watching it very closely. Of those tested, we had 2,393 cases of COVID. 73% of those were asymptomatic. Most of these cases were caught in mass testing. We isolated and quarantined individuals based on exposure and test results following CDC guidelines. We lost 29 individuals related to COVID-19. 1 is too many. However, all of the 29 had pre-existing medical conditions that had made them high risk, and our staff provided them the best possible care under the circumstances. And again, I would remind everybody that naturally with natural causes, we lose an average of 10 a month in our department, unfortunately. Today, we have 60 current positives, only 12 of them are symptomatic. We have 4 state prisons, no positive cases at Allen, Hunt, LCIW, and I would mention at 3 different locations. Raymond, not Raymond, but Raymond, Rayburn Correctional Center, excuse me. We have 2 state prisons with less than 2 cases, DCI and David Wade. Actually, I believe David Wade has 2 and DCI has 1. Raymond LaBorde is mass testing and has 41 positive cases, 4 of which are symptomatic. I also want to mention that the use of CAMJ for the quarantine and isolation proved to be beneficial in this response. We had to implement unique solutions to this pandemic, and our CAMJ operation has done just that. We had to find ways to help those at the local level in facilities that had no options to do anything but to move them, and we had to provide that movement, and as all of you know. We installed air conditioning at CAMJ. We supplemented staffing with P&P officers. We assigned dedicated healthcare staff to work only that unit. Obviously, sanitize, PPEs, all the things that you would normally do in housing an operation like that. We used the resources we had to ensure that people were safe, and it worked. We have returned 334 individuals to the local level who were sent to CAMJ for isolation and recovery. Today, we only have 2 individuals housed at Camp J from the local level, 2 individuals. LSP uses this housing for positive cases, and they also return to their regular housing location once they are considered recovered. No one died from COVID-19 from this unit. No one died from this unit. This is a testament to the care and attention they were given while they were housed there. Our staff continue to do their very best to fight the impacts of COVID-19. While we may not all agree on what the correct response should have, could have, would have been, I hope that we can agree that the staff who showed up every day at our prisons, including our probation and parole division, to work in unknown risk should be commended for their service to the state. These staff are first responders and should be recognized as such. Now I want to shift gears. I want to discuss our justice reinvestment initiatives. It is working. Our prison population has decreased from our peak in 2012 by almost 32%. 28,139 today compared to almost 42,000 in 2012. That's, again, 13,000 less people in prison today than where we were at in 2012. It's important for all of us to remember that Louisiana is unique in housing individuals in partnership with our local sheriffs, and that 80% of our releases come from local jails. This creates unique challenges that we are working hard to address. I'll remind everybody, 23% of the reduction of that 32% has been since our criminal justice reforms in 2017, and a significant part of that reduction has been at the local level. Although from the cost savings of this reduction, we have been allowed to invest 70% of our savings back into strategic efforts of individual success and address those very issues on an individual level. Give you some examples. LCLE is up. $4 million have been invested in our victims. Obviously, we need to keep them in the mix. There's no question about that. East Baton Rouge and a Family Justice Center, we've invested in that. Services to victims of family violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. Crime Victims Reparation Fund paid down some of the backlog, not some, a good portion of the backlog of crime victims claims pending from previous years. We've caught up, I believe, 2016 and 2017 and working hard on 2018. And then invested in the clerk of court APRIS interface, electronic victim notification process that they've been working on. OJJ, Office of Juvenile Justice, we all know is a pipeline to adult corrections, unfortunately. We've invested $4.6 million, statewide alternatives to juvenile detention, creation and enhancement of statewide juvenile diversion programs, a much needed operation and obviously providing the resources for them to do that. Department of Corrections, this is pretty wide range, $10 million, creation of community program manager positions in probation and parole, reentry centers at day reporting centers. And I would mention that reentry centers has become a big part of what we're doing. And I want to share with you, I have noted here, a little bit about reentry centers because I think it focuses in on what we're doing at the local level. We have a reentry center, what I call Southwest and Beauregard Parish. That used to be a state facility, Phelps Correctional Center, a large facility, classrooms. It was built as a school back in the day. It has the facilities to make an ideal reentry center for Southwest Louisiana. Caddo Corrections is in Northwest Louisiana. We're in the process of working with the sheriff right now in negotiating the use of what they closed the transitional work program to utilize that facility, and we built a reentry center there to begin with. But this will make an ideal reentry center for Northwest Louisiana. Franklin Parish does Northeast Louisiana. They have a site there that's already ready to go that we think we can build some additional educational services there to compensate for the lack of space there. We invested in that. Lafayette, South Central Louisiana. A little up and down there, as we all know, but I can tell you, I've visited and toured that facility. There's a lot of potential to do some good things there for the Lafayette area. Then Lafourche, and I'll mention that, toured Lafourche, brand new facility, has a lot of options to do some good things there. And we look forward to working with Sheriff Weber, who's been a big part of our reentry efforts and our criminal justice reform. Louisiana Transitional Center for Women, as we all know, most of us know if you've been here long enough, that was a juvenile facility back in the day. It was a bad deal that was shut down. But the upside of it is it's being put to good use. Again, it's kind of like Phelps. It has all the classrooms and things that we need to provide our female facilities, female offenders, the kind of things they need in order to return to our communities. Plaquemines Parish for Orleans and Jefferson, a fairly new facility built after Katrina. Again, a lot of places to do things, a lot of resources, a lot of things that we can do there that we haven't been able to do for Orleans and Jefferson. Rapides for Central Louisiana, we're working with them. We have a little ways to go there, but there's a lot of potential at Rapides. St. Tammany, East Feliciana Parish area. Plenty of room there. I visit there, I toured there. They have good staff there. They're working hard. There's some good things that will happen and are happening out of that reentry center. West Baton Rouge, now East Baton Rouge, we're negotiating now to open up a new part of East Baton Rouge Parish Jail, which I know we've heard a lot of bad things about that jail, but I have visited, toured it. There is a section of that we can help with renovations and actually have a reentry center at East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. And of course, Warden Grimes is excited about that opportunity. So I thought it was important to hit on that. You know, we're reinvesting. We've souped up 4 or 5 of them, and we'll continue to do that. The estimated with the souped up investment is about $1 million. With the just normal reentry center is about $550,000 invested in those facilities on top of what we pay per diem wise. So I wanted to mention that. Of course, in DOC, moving on a little bit, educational program enhancements. We are invested in education and the things that we need to invest in, career and technical educational programs, and of course, industry-based certification programs. And our community incentive grants, I know that Nicole was on this morning talking a lot about that, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it other than I want to mention a few things. If you weren't in that particular program, you might not know everything that's going on. So I'm going to mention a few things. Life of a Single Mom, you know, in East Baton Rouge Parish, obviously at LCRW, both Hunt and Judson locations. The Louisiana Parole Project, that's actually in 11 of our tier 1 and 2 parishes now, which is doing some great stuff. I've visited a couple of their housing units that they have available for people that are coming out of prison, especially those that have been in for a long time. United Way of Northwest Louisiana, Caddo Parish, working hard up there with that group. A lot of good things happening. Catholic Charities, Orleans and St. Tammany, again, family reunification, counseling, workforce development, all the things, the wraparound services that we need to compensate for is happening in these organizations. United Way of Southeast Louisiana, Jefferson Parish, again, a big parish, a lot of people coming from and going back to, a very important part of what we're doing. Orleans Public Defenders in Orleans, alternatives to incarceration and to reduce emissions. Goodwill Industries of Southeast Louisiana, it's Orleans, services to high, moderate risk to service coordination and transition team leaders. Center for Educational Excellence in Alternative Settings. This is kind of a program that we're developing for wraparound services for different areas, but mostly in Orleans. Southern University at New Orleans, education and employment readiness, family reunification and support. Odyssey House, Calcasieu and Lafayette, again in that area, behavioral health care services. United Way of Southwest Louisiana, Calcasieu, again, support services, including housing and transportation. Community Foundation of North Louisiana in the Washita area. And I'm saying all these, and I guess my point is we're getting there. We're getting organizations involved. We're getting statewide. We're spreading out, which is a good thing. Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, again, in Lafayette Parish area. They're working with us on reentry. Volunteers of America in North Louisiana, Central and Central area, and Rapides Parish mainly. United Way of Northwest Louisiana, the Bossier Parish area, case management and wraparound services. Goodwill Industries, the Southeast Louisiana, Terrebonne and Lafourche. So real quick rundown on all those. We're working, we have contracts. I think all those I think all our organizations are doing well. Look, and I know that we have issues. The people out there doing the work, you guys know more about it a lot of times than we do. I just, I encourage people to get along. Let's work together. We're going to have our obstacles and deal with those obstacles. and keep moving in the right direction. We all on the same mission. Every one of us on the same mission. There should be no reason why we're not on the same page and doing the things that we need to do. We've also recently invested $350,000 in emergency and transitional houses to date. We have served 91 people, providing 6,690 bed days for those with no place to go at a cost of $130,000. This program provides limited time funds for short-term housing for those on supervision to stabilize the reentry process until longer-term housing can be found. And while it's not JRI specific, this is a good time to announce that DPS&C was awarded $2.5 million last week through second chance funding. This new grant will align well with our JRI efforts by funding outcomes-based contracting for substance abuse treatment, recovery housing, and employment to individuals with a substance abuse disorder who have been recently released to the greater New Orleans area. This program will address an urgent need for the additional recovery housing while modeling a new format for using investment funds. We will be awaiting the final details on the planning period for this grant. We're excited about the work to come. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about our reentry services. What we're doing now in adult education. Prior to COVID-19 pandemic, we were offering adult education, high-set literacy programs at all of our 8 state prisons and 24 of our local jails. In responding to COVID, we modified our provision of those services. Distant learning began in May after materials were received and dispersed to the facilities. 8 state facilities and again 24 local jails are participating in distance learning. We were able to expand the use of our cloud-based learning in partnership with ATLO to allow students to access testing and learning platforms in ways that have never been done within the confines of a prison. Devices such as computers, Chromebooks, and smartboards are currently being used for adult education and career and technical education training programs. Absolutely mandatory. This is something we've learned from. A little bit of forced into this, but we are learning that this is a good mechanism to use. Something they learn from, something they need to know when they get out of the facilities. In June, we developed a template for our facilities to submit a reopening plan, and we continue to review, approve, and implement those plans as they are submitted in monitoring programs that have reopened. The following facilities have requested approval to implement modified in-person programs on some level that ensure healthy and safety precautions. 5 state prisons: Allen, LCRW, Judson and Hunt, LSP, David Wade, Rayburn, and Hunt. 15 local jails, all the way from Plackham Parish to Washita, has also requested that, and I'm not going to go through them all, but they are beginning to open up, which is a good thing. Testing has begun in some programs. Special arrangements have been made in various facilities because of inability to access their education buildings to have test booklets and supplies delivered to expedite testing. Mobile computerized testing labs purchased through JRI funds are being used in areas outside of the education building. Chromebooks are being utilized in the dorms for high-set prep. In regard to career and technical education, post-secondary education, it's pretty amazing that our career and technical education program, we now have 132 industry-based certification programs with stackable credentials, utilizing 17 credentialing agencies across 44 training craft areas currently. I would note, due to COVID-related budget and cuts from Central Louisiana Technical Community College and Baton Rouge Community College, the schools will be discontinuing services to correctional facilities once the current students are taught through completion of the next possible credential. Career and technical programs have been resumed at facilities where educational programs have been approved by headquarters and movement has opened back up. Facilities who still have COVID cases, in most cases, have been unable to resume full programming. Career and technical education staff are currently working on a plan to deploy distance learning for the students. Justice reinvestment funds has been dispersed throughout the state to start up, supplement, and enhance industry-based certification programs. This includes new programs and, of course, to replace the LCTCS programs that are being discontinued. Also, I'm just sharing a little bit about probation and parole, our community corrections. And I really believe that probation and parole is now really community corrections, which is important. Probation and parole has been through a major transformation in the way they do business. We have had a cultural shift in our operations, and we're seeing that new approach to offering support while holding individuals accountable is working. It is working. Current case count is 52,855 from 72,000. 52,855 from 72,000. 20,000 less people on probation and parole today than it was just a few years ago. Average caseload is going from 150 to 104. If you read the paper yesterday morning for East Baton Rouge, you saw the East Baton Rouge had the same number of murders this year already as it did in 2019. I share this because this aligns with the work of probation and parole staff and are embarking in East Baton Rouge. And again, this is still in the planning stages. And as I've told the DA and the people that are involved in the Truth program, not looking for a lot of publicity here. We want to make this and put this into work. And I would quote Mayor Broom in the Sunday paper here in Baton Rouge. Crime is more likely to occur when people are unable to meet their most basic needs: education, stable income, residence, transportation, access to nutritious food, and health care. Man, does that ring a bell with us all, doesn't it? I mean, that is right on and right where you guys are going and what we're working on. It couldn't be more true and absolutely aligns with the work. We're doing what we are doing, what we all are doing through JRI, finding solutions while identifying sources. This morning, you all had a session on interrupting the pipeline of prison focusing on youth. I'm sorry I missed it, but I hope that the East Baton Rouge pilot project will become a model program for this very issue. It's called SOAR, and nobody's really heard this yet. We're still in the planning stages. Supporting offenders achieve rehabilitation. Focus on what participants under 25 years of age have a history of offenses related to firearms, violence, and/or drugs, high risk to reoffend, and on active probation or parole supervision. Designate 2 officers with a reduced caseload of 30 offenders each or less. Work closely with justice partners, judges, district attorneys, and of course, troops. Hold orientation meetings to introduce the participant to the program. Meetings will be positive, establish clear expectations, and encourage participants to be successful. It will include stakeholders who may address questions or provide assistance. Engage the participant and their family, and I repeat, and their family, in building a supervision plan to establish goals and address barriers. Utilize community resources, organizations, and evidence-based practice to build an offender's strength and address their needs. Needs may include housing, transportation, education, job skills, job placement, drug treatment, mental health treatment, anger management, all the things that we talk about all the time. Use technology to enhance communication with the participant and providers. Maintain participants' goals, small and large, and provide notification of appointments and court dates for participants to meet obligations. Use rewards to address accomplishments. Use rewards. We have a tendency to overlook rewards sometimes and look more at the punishment side, but that's changed. That is obviously changed in our culture, in our department. Use swift and certain actions to address violations. Technical violations will be addressed using alternatives to revocation, reprimands, curfews, tracking systems, in custody treatment programs, and transitional work programs. If successful, we would do this statewide, and I believe it will be, and I believe this will have a major impact on the violent crime that's going on in our major metropolitan areas today. Also, our probation pro staff are embracing on a new and innovative technology that will make a difference. It's called POKET, P-O-K-K-E-T. I wish I could tell you what those acronyms mean, but I can't. But it is a pilot program as the one I just talked about. The goal is to reduce revocations in the Lafayette area. Focus population, parolees participating in reentry center in Lafayette. This ties into what we're doing in the Lafayette area. Probationers participating in drug court under Judge Evans. And again, thank Judge Edwards for everything that he's done working with us. And this is just one of those things that adds to his list of successes. Participants are moderate to high risk to reoffend and have high needs. It's a web-based program. It may be used on a cell phone or a tablet, but it is not an app. Therefore, it is not restricted to a cell phone or tablet. There's no cost to the participant. We pay the bill, and currently we have right now a contract for 140 participants. Technology is used to engage the participant to be involved in their reentry process. They're utilizing the ATLO tablets in the reentry center to learn how to use and begin using the application within 3 months of their release. I kind of overlooked reentry centers. That reminded me that a lot of that, I think we're at 9 or 10 reentry centers, kind of correlates with our reentry centers. And so our day reporting centers, I'm sorry. I'm apologize for that. They will enable our PNP staff to do pre-release and reach. They will begin the process of building a supervision plan and addressing needs upon release, and they will continue to use an application for 6 months post-release. Probationers will begin their application upon sentencing and will use the application for a total of 9 months. And I think, again, that the probational part of this is important too. Medical and mental health, court dates, other appointments may be loaded into the system to provide the participant a reminder of obligations. They can develop goals and tasks. At a glance, the participant may see what is due or is upcoming within a week, or what is overdue and needs to be taken care of. They can receive reminders of their tasks and can mark items complete to remove it from their task. It may request appointments with the officer or provide us through the application. They will begin using the application upon sentencing again for 9 months. I think I mentioned that already. The application allows the participant and officer to be on the same page. And I would add that in-reach is important here. And I say that because with tablets and the things that we can use now in the prisons, especially those in restrictive housing, if the officer can meet with them prior to releasing, that's going to make a big difference in what happens when they do release out of our prisons. And that again is important. COVID and Hurricane Laura has affected the pilot program in the Lafayette area, and currently it's only 13 participants, but we expect that to rise as soon as we start opening up. I mentioned earlier that we put PNP program managers in place through the JRI investments. They are in each district office and coordinate and assist formerly incarcerated to ensure that they are in the right programs and obtaining the necessary services for success. I would continue to talk about the work of our day reporting centers, the Implementation Act 280, our earned compliance credit, and other uses of technology that we are piloting, but time does not allow me to cover everything the staff are doing in DOC. Know that there are good things happening, and I'm hoping I explained some of that in my prior remarks. I also want to take time to share my excitement about work we are doing to improve employment opportunities for those releasing from our prisons and on supervision with probation and parole. This by far is our biggest challenge. I don't think there's any question about it. And, we're addressing the housing issue. In next year's money, and I don't know if Nicole talked about that in her presentation, but we're going to focus in on transportation and getting people to work and getting them where they need to go with appointments. But employment is our biggest challenge, and we're working heavy on that. Employment advisory board work. We have an employment advisory board now, basically working around our reentry court operations at Angola with John Easley. ATLO employee applicant website project. This will allow our offenders that are releasing to apply for jobs before they release. Actually apply before they release, and the employer will have an opportunity to see the application and possibly get hired before he's released, or at least set up an interview. This is all new territory for us. We're excited about it, and I'm not sure if Rhett's on the program this week or not to talk a little bit more in specifics, but all of you know Rhett, and he's the one that's handling that. Employment agencies, we hired Ascension Staffing. We were just really getting up and running with Ascension Staffing, and really the basis of that is let's learn what our challenges are from the staffing companies, and also for them to learn what our challenges are in the prison, so we can work together and resolve those issues. And by the time we really got that cranked up, that's when COVID hit us, and we haven't been able to get that going in the right direction at this point, but we will shortly. Promoting employer benefits. I'm really excited about what's going on there. But we're going to make employers accessible on our website, where they can go to our website and they get good direction from our website as to what they need to do in order to at least consider hiring people coming out of our facilities. Of course, our transitional work program is always positive. Those are down. The numbers are down right now because of COVID, but I expect those numbers to roll back up. These are people that are working in the private sector before they're released. So our staff are doing some innovative and creative things to ensure employers are aware of the availability of skilled workers coming out of our prisons who just need someone to give them a second chance. If the individuals can be diverted to a healthy work environment, they are less likely to return to the corners to make ends meet. If we can give them a chance, we improve our outcomes and, of course, improve public safety. There's also working that is going on with the families of the incarcerated. I wanted to mention that. We met last week or week before. It was our third meeting, I believe, this year. A great group of people. We're not getting full participation, but the participants that are operating are doing a great job. Is to develop and enhance communications between DOC and the family members of the incarcerated. This past year, the group divided into two subcommittees: communications, charged with identifying ways to enhance communications among DOC family members and the incarcerated. Recommendation is a quarterly newsletter for families and the incarcerated. Pre-release, charged with identifying areas in which families can become more involved in the reentry process. Recommendation is to develop a pre-release program taught by formerly incarcerated and a two-tier mentorship program. Our mental health project, as we all know, mental health is a great challenge for all of us, local level, state level, and probation and probe. So this happened at one of our statewide directors meeting. There was a presentation by a company, its name is Falcon. Their experts are corrections, people that have worked in corrections and understand corrections. So we're in the process of working with them, performing a comprehensive review of existing mental health programs, components, procedures, processes, and operations, conducting a thorough analysis of our mental health programs system-wide and by facility for the purposes of program development and enhancements, providing a range of actionable short and long-term solutions if any areas of recommendations are found. And then, of course, an overview of our local level operations to find out exactly what we need to do to improve at the local level. Restrictive housing, segregation. We all know that the Yale Lyman survey was just published, and it shows that Louisiana has decreased from 19% of our population in restrictive housing settings to 4.8% in 2019. Leading the country in reduction. We've reduced our population in restrictive housing by almost 2,000 individuals less in restrictive housing. So what we're doing is working in restrictive housing. One thing I haven't mentioned is the hurricanes. I didn't have that in my talking points, but Laura and Sally, we evacuated 3,700 roughly inmates out of the southern region. I'll mention that. And then Sally, we did evacuate it, took a turn, thank goodness, about 1,700. Everything went fine, no incidents of any sort. All COVID, PPEs, everything was done appropriately. We have tested. The only place that we really have any significant positives, I believe, was Plaquemines Parish. We had 148 out of roughly 500 there that were positive. But we're managing that. I'm not sure if they're not all, obviously all asymptomatic, and we have overcome that. I'm sure most of them are already back under normal operation. And the last thing that I kind of want to, close with, and I want to share with you, is that the issue of cultural justice is not lost with me or our staff. I'm well aware of the issues our country faces in identifying the problem and creating solutions. We are working on this in our own department in many ways, including the implementation of mandatory unconscious bias and diversity training for all staff. But today I thought in closing that I wanted to share with you guys a letter that I wrote to all of our staff in the department. And I'll close with that. Following the tragic death of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, our country has become passionate about our behavior as it relates to our interactions with one another. I, like so many others, felt disgusted when I watched the video footage of his death at the hands of 4 Minnesota police officers, people who took an oath to serve and protect. Today, there's nothing bonding in our country together more than a mutual agreement that the officer's response in this incident was inappropriate and disproportionate to the threat presented. This death was senseless and heartbreaking and has served to open the dialogue about our justice system, weaknesses and failures. I believe that the vast majority of law enforcement is comprised of honorable and courageous public servants. The officers involved in this incident and those involved in similar incidents do not represent the law enforcement community as a whole. However, I recognize and understand that the events of recent years have made it clear that this tragic death is not a singular occurrence, but one repeated far too many times due to lack of appropriate response and clearly identified expectations of behavior, expectations that should be associated with clear consequences for those who do not meet them. As a department and a key member of the criminal justice community, I believe we have the responsibility to acknowledge the hurt and injustice felt by Black Americans. As men and women who serve to protect the public safety of our communities and the lives entrusted to our custody and our supervision, we must recognize that it's time for conversation and responsive action about how we can do better in our department, in our communities, in our state, and of course, in America. It is our responsibility to ensure that our behaviors acknowledge and respond to a broken system and that those on the receiving end of unjust response have their voices heard. Only when we truly listen, acknowledge, and understand the behaviors that are inappropriate, divisive, and identified as racist can we begin to work on developing solutions. I have served as a civil servant in the department for over 45 years. I have personally witnessed and been a part of a tremendous change in how we do business and the implementation of solutions. In the most recent years, I have the tremendous honor to serve as Department Secretary, a position that has given me the opportunity to foster change and progress. Every day is an honor for me to work with the outstanding staff of this department and my justice system colleagues to have a positive impact on the lives of others. The current events in our country provide the impetus for us to continue to work to identify where we can improve. This is a time for us to remember what we as a department and a community can stand for and what we stand against. Like our law enforcement brethren, corrections are the place in our flawed justice system and its history is neither perfect nor blameless. We are in a unique position to make changes, and we can not only call for action, but we must lead by example. We can continue to advocate for system changes in Louisiana's justice system, as we have done through our justice reform and reinvestment initiative, restrictive housing changes, and expansion of education and reentry services. However, equally as critical to systemic change, we must each be purposeful and intentional in our daily interactions with our co-workers and the men and women in our custody under our supervision, to model what it means to treat our fellow man with empathy, dignity, honor, and respect. Strong relationship or mutual trust amongst our 5,000 employees, as well as the approximately 80,000 men and women in our custody and under supervision, are the backbone of the success of the mission and vision of this department. As we strive to improve lives and build communities, may we continue to foster transformation and policy changes that will lead to a correction system that is equitable and just for those entrusted to our care and those employed within our department. Our first response should be to keep those directly impacted by the death of George Floyd in our thoughts and prayers. This obviously includes his family and loved ones, his community, and those who were hurt after watching that horrible video. It also includes the law enforcement officers across the country who uphold the oaths they took to serve and protect those with honorable careers or being called into question as a result of those who abuse their authority. The next step must be to look in the mirror and have an honest conversation with yourself about where you fit and what you can do to personally impact change. Lastly, certainly not least, we must stand ready to name the behaviors that perpetuate bias, listen to solutions, and be responsive to the opportunities for change. So I wanted to share that with you because I think that was an important message, for our department and for the people that we have responsibility for, and of course our communities. So with that, I guess my final comment is, with the help of our criminal justice partners, our employers, our service providers, our community coalitions, REAL, and again, thank you, REAL, for making this happen. And those involved in this week's conference, we can and we will make a difference. Thank you again, and enjoy your conference. And I'm not sure if we have questions.
We have one question. It says, how can community-based reentry programs in smaller parishes and rural areas receive support from the state to build and expand the work they're doing?
That's a good question. And I'm assuming they hear your. Okay,
Yeah,
so we haven't forgot about the rural areas. We know that there has to be part of this. We were hoping we would have enough money in last year's savings to get more towards the rural areas. But I think with our probation and parole division and the things that we're doing there with them, with the program coordinators, and there's got to be a way. And I'm willing to listen from the rural groups, the communities in those areas. For the person asking the question, I would suggest that let's organize a meeting. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do. There may be funding available where we can help out in the rural areas. There's no question about it. Probation and parole, though, is a big part of that and has to be a big part of that. Let's hope that we can find a way to help out with our justice reinvestment funding.
Any other questions?
I hope I wasn't too long. I enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good day. Be careful. Be safe. Take care of yourself.
Good night.